All right, we are live.
Okay, this is our regularly scheduled meeting of the Infrastructure Committee, and around the table, we have committee members, Councillor Dean, Councillor Fournier, Councillor Hawes, and Councillor Leonard. We also have Council Chair Pelletier, Councillor Trimble, Councillor Yakubaga, and Aaron Hootery is going to kick us off with a discussion on the Emerald Ash Borer.
Good evening. As Chair said, Aaron Hootery, Public Works. I wanted to talk a little bit, and I know we love to talk about brown-tailed moth here, but now we're going to talk about another pest tonight called the Emerald Ash Borer. Maine Forest Service has been tracking an infestation in the state of Maine since 2018. It was discovered in Aroostook County and York County at the same time, and it has been moving around the state since then. It was discovered in Stetson in 2022 and Herman in 2023. We're expecting it to be found in Bangor in 2024. So last year we did engage, the Public Works Forestry Division did engage with the University of Maine School of Forest Resources, specifically with Dr. Livingston and John Daigle, and I'm not sure what his title is, but we met with them in 2023 and talked about what we might do proactively here in the city of Bangor. And they actually recommended two Master of Forestry program students, Sophia Cameron and Will G. And we were able to, we were able to get them to come on board with us this summer, along with two undergraduate students. So we had 4 students working with us this summer. What I'd like to do is invite Sophie Cameron to the table and talk a little bit about what they've done this summer and what Emerald Ash Borer means to the city. So, share. There we go.
So the camera gets me.
Yes. And then just use the arrow.
Cool, great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Like Aaron said, my name is Sophia Cameron. I'm a master's of forestry student at the University of Maine in the School of Forest Resources. I've been working with the city of Bangor as an intern since the beginning of the summer. I was specifically brought on to help them develop their Emerald Ash Borer management plan, along with Ben Arruda, the city forester. And today I'm here to talk to you guys about Emerald Ash Borer and its potential impacts on the city of Bangor. So I wanted to do a quick overview of what Emerald Ash Borer is. I'll be referring to it as EAB throughout most of this presentation. Its scientific name is Agrillus planipennis. It's a small metallic green insect. It's actually quite pretty, but if you see one, your blood runs a little bit cold. It feeds on the phloem of ash trees, so that's the inner bark. So if you take away the rough exterior, you get kind of a smooth inner bark, and it feeds on those. You can kind of see in this image here how that happens. They develop these serpentine galleries through the phloem, and the phloem is the vascular tissue of the tree. So that's how all water and nutrients are transported from the roots to the crown of the tree. So once that's damaged, the tree is essentially girdled, and those resources can no longer get to the top of the tree. And so what's very kind of the telltale sign of Emerald Ash Borer decline, but can't confirm an infestation, is dieback from the top down. So if you start seeing the upper limbs start to die back and then move downwards, that's a pretty significant indicator that it may be Emerald Ash Borer. But like Aaron mentioned one of the only ways to truly identify that it is Emerald Ash Borer is by these serpentine galleries. So that's how the Maine Forest Service confirms the presence of Emerald Ash Borer. It is currently present in 36 US states and 5 countries outside of its native range of Eastern Asia. It was introduced into Maine in 2018. That was the first sighting, but it was in the US in 2002. So Maine is kind of on the tail end of this. It is already present in some provinces of Canada, as well as Aaron mentioned, Aroostook County. As well, and it was found in Herman in 2023. So this is why we're very concerned and acting now, as opposed to acting later. Here are some zoomed in images of some signs as well as the insect itself. So again, it's this very kind of crazy iridescent bug. They look like they have little mustaches, which is cute, but I don't really want to endear you to them. And then their larvae are these longer segmented, kind of grubs, I would call them. But the larvae are what create those galleries, and make that winding pattern. I don't know if you can see the darker portion because there's some debris covering it, but it's very distinctly back and forth like that. Additionally, another sign of EAB that is unique to the insect are these D-shaped exit holes, circled here in white. They'll have kind of a U shape on top and a flat bottom, and that's where the adult exits the tree after it has pupated. The serpentine galleries are more used for identification because the D-shaped boreholes are very hard to spot, especially since the insect initially infests from the top of the tree and then goes down as they run out of food at the top. So that's why it's so difficult to detect early. And usually by the time you can detect an insect infestation in the tree, it's very close to being too late, unless you're looking for it. Ash trees in Maine, I want to touch on this a little bit because I think it's important that we understand the resource that we have here in Bangor. They're a native species of deciduous hardwood tree, and they're found throughout Maine and eastern US. The 3 species we have in Maine specifically are brown ash, white ash, and green ash. Green and white ash are very often planted as street trees because they provide a lot of shade. They take up a lot of water. They're really good for riparian systems. So if you go down on the Kenduskeag Stream Parkway, you'll see a lot of ash trees planted along the waterway there. Brown ash is a really culturally important tree to the Wabanaki people, which is the indigenous group of Maine, specifically because it's used in their basket making as well as being a part of their origin story. So that being said, anything that the city of Bangor does, we're going to be taking that into consideration and discussing with tribal leaders and experts on kind of that aspect of this issue. It is, like I said, very popularly planted. That's an image of the UMaine Mall where I go to school, and those are all ash trees, which were put in after all the elm trees died. So it's definitely a big problem. Some ID stuff, I did give you guys little fact sheets with some ID keys, but it has compound leaves, which have kind of, it's essentially one central vein and then separate leaflets off of it. And they can have anywhere between 5 to 9 of those with a terminal leaflet. And then their seeds are those samaras that will kind of do the little helicopter thing when they fall. So those are 2 distinguishing factors. And then if it's winter, the bark is kind of this diamond shaped, and that varies between species, but it's a very typical looking bark. So I want to touch briefly on one of the major things that myself and the 3 other Maine students accomplished this summer under the guidance of Ben. We completed a total street and urban tree inventory for the city of Bangor using Field Maps, which is a GIS related software. To do that, we pretty much walked to every tree in the city of Bangor that was on public property or within a right of way of a road. And we recorded it with GPS coordinates as well as the nearest address, and we set the species. Sorry, I just want to make sure you guys need this. We set the species as well, which was important in helping me kind of work with the ash population specifically. And then in addition to just adding the point, so we knew where it was, we did an inspection for every single tree. And that included the date that it was inspected, the diameter at breast height, which is kind of just using a tape measure to determine the size of the tree, which will help with management direction in the future. And then also their condition, like their health condition on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being dead, 5 being a really, really excellent tree. And then if there were any intrusions on utility lines, people's homes or buildings, streets, sidewalks, whether or not their roots were growing into private property, all the things like that, as well as whether or not future management would be required. It's important to note that this does not include any privately owned trees. And it also does not include the city forest. I didn't put that note on here. So this is the map that we got out of that. All of those green dots are trees. This map is a little bit deceptive because if you were to zoom in, you'd see that they're very densely packed in. So this looks like a lower number than it is. But the total number of active, as in actively managed, urban trees in Bangor is 8,574 as of this year and as of the most recent tally of that. And then on the right are all of those ash trees, and that is a total of 1,740 as of 2024. So that's about 20.3% of the urban canopy of publicly owned trees within Bangor are ash trees. And every species of ash is susceptible to emerald ash borer. A little bit morbid, but emerald ash borer does have a 98% mortality rate in ash trees. And so it's very good that we're doing this now. This is the urban tree species composition within the city. You can see that about 20% ash number, and then about 22% are Norway maples, which is an invasive species of maple tree that's commonly planted as a street tree. But you can see here that we don't have a ton of species diversity because the third most populous is at 6% as opposed to the 20%. And then this is just kind of the top 10 list of trees by number. So again, Norway maple at the top, ash next, silver maple, et cetera, et cetera. So that being said, we can use this as a very unique opportunity to increase the species diversity here because we have very limited species diversity in our street trees. So the possible management strategies for dealing with emerald ash borer, it's usually kind of a four-pronged approach, and we plan on using each of these at appropriate kind of intervals. So removal would be removing infested trees if we were in active infestation. At this time, like I said, Maine Forest Service hasn't confirmed that we have emerald ash borer here, so we're not in active infestation. So instead, we're hoping to remove trees that are currently in very poor condition and already pose a risk to public safety to prevent further risk once they completely die from the insect. And that will continue to adjust year to year as this kind of progresses. Additionally, treatment. So you can treat trees with insecticides. These insecticides are injected into the tree, so it stays contained within the tree, within that vascular structure that the insect usually feeds on. There's an image of it right there. And you want to treat trees that are of fairly vigorous, look healthy, don't have any progression of infestation. I think you can treat trees until they have lost about 40% of their leaves to the infestation. So we've been taking some time to go around the city and find trees that are eligible for that as well. A huge part of this is replacement. We want to make sure we're replacing the trees that we take down. We'll talk a little bit about why our urban canopy is so important in this city specifically. So when a tree is taken down, we want to seek to ensure that we are planting again with climate change hardy species, as well as making sure that those trees are appropriate for the location where they're planted, because we don't want to start planting huge trees under power lines because that creates a bigger issue. And then additionally, monitoring is a big part of this. I know the Maine Forest Service currently has these purple triangle traps out that are sticky and have a fair amount of stressed ash trees. So it'll track the bugs to it. And that's a good way to determine whether or not it's in the area. The city itself also intends to put some of these up too. Some things to consider with any of these management strategies are the continued effects of climate change. We want to make sure that anything that is happening takes that into consideration. As well as the cost of each management strategy, making sure that this is cost effective. And then also how to manage ash trees that are susceptible to emerald ash borer on private property so that that isn't burdening the people of Bangor, because a lot of those big trees in people's backyards are going to pose the greatest risk to buildings, public safety, that kind of thing. As well as the overall aesthetic quality of the city landscape and also mitigating damage to public and private property. So the importance of maintaining dense urban canopy coverage, this is a really good figure from the Nature Conservancy. I think oftentimes we forget the value of street trees given that they can't be quantified into timber costs. But they provide a lot of benefits, things like air pollution filtration, reduction of the urban heat island effect, increases in overall public health because people are increasing in recreation. Stormwater management, increased property values, they sequester and store carbon as well, which is an important thing to consider as climate change progresses. And they also improve city aesthetics, just the visual quality of the city. Briefly talking about the urban heat island effect, that's essentially when you have a lot of impermeable surfaces that attract and retain heat. And that can cause urban areas to be 2 to 4 degrees warmer Fahrenheit than kind of suburban or more rural areas outside of it. And again, as climate change progresses and temperatures continue to rise, we want to make sure that we're doing anything to mitigate that. So increasing shade coverage and coverage over those areas with trees is a really good way to manage the urban heat island effect. And as for stormwater management, this was just an interesting tidbit that I think really hit our point home in that we need to keep trees and add trees to the city of Bangor. Is that there was a study in 2020 in a Midwest town that has very similar demographics to Bangor. And they removed 29 green ash trees artificially. They cut them down for part of this experiment. And that increased stormwater runoff into the stormwater system by 4%, which was about 52,000 gallons extra that year. That was 29 trees. We're looking at losing quite a bit more than that. So that's just something to take into consideration as well, is that this issue is definitely not just about losing trees. It does have a greater effect to the city as well. So in closing, ash are a really important part of Bangor's landscape. And they're also really culturally important in Maine. In that packet handout, the stapled one that I gave you guys, there are some more resources with extra information on this issue there that I recommend you check out. Emerald ash borer does pose a very significant threat to all ash in Bangor because of its recent discovery in Herman. It's kind of just a matter of time until we're dealing with it as well. However, right now we are at an advantage because everything we're doing is preemptive as opposed to retroactive, which has been shown to be the most effective way to manage for this. Additionally, currently, the inventory data that we collected, as I showed you all, is going to be used to determine the best course of action in dealing with this issue specific to Bangor, which is also very helpful that we have that inventory data so recently as opposed to several years ago. So we do know where almost every ash tree in the city is, and can continue to monitor them as time goes on. And that the city should prioritize maintenance and growth of a dense urban canopy coverage for all of those benefits that I specified earlier. Thank you all for having me. Sorry if I talked a little fast. Does anyone have any questions?
Councilor Trumbull?
A couple questions. First, a comment. I mean, this is a great presentation, very comprehensive. And when you started, I was thinking, well, I'm gonna ask what percentage is ash and she'll guess out of it. You were able to say 20.3, and you know how many ash we've got, so I was very impressed with that. And now, in the future, as we want to replant trees, what species should we be looking at?
So we're
Ash for ash or something else?
So we're currently exploring a couple of ideas there. There is some, this is a more of a distant future concern, but there is some movement on creating hybridized green ash that show resistance to emerald ash borer, and that's a potential avenue in the future. I don't think the research lab that is working on that is all the way there yet. And obviously, since currently we're trying to, that would be something that happens on the tail end of this. So once we've seen a lot of mortality and we've kind of gone through the initial management, then we could start experimenting with introducing hybridized green ash, or ash that show resistance. That being said, we're also looking into, obviously the climate hardy species that we already have in Maine, right? Like the heat resistant ones. Additionally, we're looking at doing something called assisted migration or range extension, which is taking more southern species of southern New England species of trees and planting them up here so that as we see the temperatures increase, those trees are already acclimated to that and they're able to do better in this area. And obviously then keeping in mind as we're replanting, making sure the right tree is in the right place.
One other question I had, What did the Forest Service say? How do they think it got it? People bring wood, firewood in from out of state, or how do they think it was introduced to Maine?
Yeah, that's the primary theory for coming to Maine is bringing firewood out of state. Its original introduction into the US is suspected to be through pallet wood. So shipping pallets are often made of ash from Asia, and then they're brought over here and the insect can live inside for an extended period of time. That's something I should have included in here, is that there is a quarantine situation in place from the Maine Forest Service. There is a resource in that packet where you can go and see the current map of that quarantine across the Maine counties. But one of the most important things now, and part of our public outreach aspect of this, is that we highly recommend that no one moves ash wood specifically out of Penobscot County at this time, because that is how they usually move from place to place.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Councilor Poirier?
So that trap I was talking to Aaron about in Fairmount,
Mhm.
so how often do you check that? And are there others around town?
So that is not ours, that the Maine Forest Service put that up after we gave them a call, because myself and Ben thought we saw some signs of emerald ash borer, so that's part of their continuous monitoring work. There are other ones, I think they put one up on the Kenduskeag Extreme Parkway, and there's one other one. But now I can't think of where it is. I've seen, oh, it's in the bog, in the Orono bog. So I've seen 3 so far. I think they intend to increase that number, and I can't speak to how often they check them. But we do hope, in the works right now is a possible collaboration with the Bangor High School as part of our public outreach to get one or a few of their students to help us kind of start our own little monitoring program, just so that we're involving the community as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Councilor Leonard?
What do you think is the timeline for executing preemptive measures before we start to see a large population of EAB in the greater Bangor area?
As Aaron said, we would not be surprised if we had confirmed emerald ash borer within 2024. If not, then at least within the next 1 to 2 years. Ideally, we would start as soon as possible. If everything lines up and that works out. Treatment of the trees that we have identified as eligible for treatment hopefully will be happening next spring and summer. And removals as well.
Is there anything specific you need from us in order to assist in this sort of way? Because I
The
mean.
you question.
Well, so Sophie's putting together recommended plans. And that will, I believe she has a deadline of May 2025 to wrap up her project, her capstone project. The intention is to bring that project, present it to the council and get support for adopting it into our comprehensive plan, but taking actions going forward. And those initial actions are accepting the list of recommended trees for saving, which means we'll start injecting those quite quickly and then inject them each 3 years. And these are trees that are of significant value because of their canopy in parks, or significant future value because these are going to grow into, nice, healthy street trees for us. So that's a long way of saying your support is what we need to move forward. The council's support.
Well, I can only speak for myself, but I would be wholly in support of this. I do have one final question. It's okay if you don't know the answer to this. It involves the hybrid trees that you were talking about earlier. And again, this is at a left field sort of question. I know that the Wabanaki hold the brown ash as very important to their culture. Do you see any potential cultural issues with creating a hybrid species at all? Or again, it's okay if you don't have the answers.
So it's actually the APCW, so APCW, which is the coalition between the University of Maine Research, and that's in the anthropology and School of Forest Resources departments, as well as Wabanaki leaders,
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
basket makers, et cetera. They're actually the ones that are, they're very actively participating in the hybridization
Awesome.
of the green ash. They can obviously speak to them better than I can. I don't know the full status of that project specifically. And I think with these sorts of scenarios where we're looking at lots of loss of a single species, those kinds of projects usually are on the tail end of infestation, so kind of the latter half.
Thank you so much for your
Yeah,
presentation.
yeah, of course.
That's awesome.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Again, I'm really happy to hear that we're on the proactive side of this as opposed to the reactive side. And that there are things you can start doing before we suddenly get the sounding of the alarm that we're being overrun by these insects. So, yeah, I would be supportive of pursuing whatever your plans are for the proactive side of it. Thank you for that.
This is, so. I'm just gonna talk here for a second, but the fact that we got these 4 students to do a complete inventory, that's a huge benefit to the city. And that we've tried multiple times over the last couple decades, and I think our first attempt was what, 2004? I mean, so we tried multiple times. This is huge to inform our efforts, have that, and the efforts that these students put in is incredible. Really put in a lot of effort this summer, not just in the counting, but in the verification, and then some additional follow-on projects for both Tracy and myself with Parks and Rec, and city parks. This is going to be a much bigger issue than we can really recognize. Talking with a tree removal service in New Hampshire that's working for municipalities down there that didn't deal with it. These trees just kind of die and stand there, and you don't really think about the danger, but they recognize that these are so dangerous that on just a clear, dry, normal, beautiful day, the trees just collapse under their own weight because they get so brittle. And to think about the danger that presents to the public, and a lot of these trees are on private property. I think we really owe it to residents to proactively research ways that we can help them remove these dangerous trees as well. So there's a lot to be done here. But we have that ability because of the proactive nature of Sophie's plan and the efforts of the forestry division and the students this summer.
So if you want to say
No, go
something.
ahead, I'll wrap up.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks for the presentation and for following up on the questions. Talking about the private properties, so how are we gonna campaign to help people, be more aware of this problem?
So step 1 is to present to the council, the infrastructure committee, which we're doing now. We've already proactively set up interviews with local media so that we can start to get the word out. The intention is to put a private reporting function through SeeClickFix so that people can report that they have ash trees on their property, so that we can start to get a handle on the inventory on private property. And things like I've initiated conversations with Director Krieg in terms of any kind of federal or state funding that might be available to help deal with dangerous trees on private property, just so that the resident isn't dealing with the full burden of it themselves.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And my comment is everything, all the above. I think it's great. I think it's great that we are partnering with the university just for an internship opportunity, just like we did with the high school students in the compost. I think more of that is always great. And also because I love maps, the tree maps, are those ours? Are those universities? Are they public?
Those are ours, and we're actually developing a story map through the ArcGIS software that will allow the public to go in, see those maps, zoom in on their streets. There's part of the strategy for treatment and saving trees includes trees from every neighborhood so that residents can look out for those trees. They know where the trees are. They're kind of protecting those and creating a sense of pride for the surviving ash trees in the city.
I think the reason why I love sharing infrastructure is just because of all the maps I get to look at. Because I'm a huge nerd for that. It's awesome. Thank
Great
you.
maps.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
So the next is kind of mappy too. This is sidewalk plowing, so.
More than.
More map.
So, yeah, I wanted to follow up on sidewalk plowing. We did go through, talk to our plow operators as well as looking at the streets. We did have streets that we had identified, or sidewalks we had identified for plowing that were more dirt than they were pavement. When on the other side of the street, there was actually nice pavement. So we have rearranged the mapping or realigned the mapping to fit where it most makes sense. We've also paved some sidewalks this summer that were issues. So, or at least by the end of the summer, we will have finished paving. So I would have loved to have brought a map today, but we are out a GIS technician right now. So we're working on it. We're working on it. We'll have updated maps as well as lists posted on the website before winter. The second part I wanted to talk about was a follow-up of that June discussion on ordinance 234-6, which is the deposit of snow and ice on public ways. We thought, or I thought, there were two mechanisms for enforcement of that ordinance. In talking with our city solicitor, we figured out that the second enforcement mechanism, which was the $100 per day fine, really doesn't apply because there's a caveat about if there's not a prescribed mechanism already. In this case, there is, and that mechanism is for Public Works to go in, remove the prohibited snow or ice, and then to charge back the property owner and or the occupant of that property. So that really is our only mechanism. Last winter, we put out hundreds of notifications of properties that were in violation where they push snow or ice onto the sidewalks. We don't have the staff to do that. We just can't go out and clean all this stuff up and start handing out invoices. So we really, I wanted to present today that I thought it made more sense to really approach this again proactively. Start out with an education campaign before winter gets here so that everybody understands the number one, it's in violation of state law. Number two, it's in violation of city ordinance. Number three, it really creates an infrastructure burden for the Public Works Department. So start out early with that education campaign through social media, through press releases, that type of thing. And then continue with our plan to post these areas that are in violation. If we continue to see the same properties that are not addressing it or continuing to do it, then I'd like to say that I will personally go visit each of those properties, but a Public Works person will stop in and talk with property owners just so that we can kind of drive that point home that this really is a problem, what they're doing. Once we've gone through those education steps, then we take a property to the city manager, because technically the Public Works Department does have to be directed by the city manager to remove that snow. We would take it to the city manager at that point, once we've exhausted all our other options, and request that we be given direction to do that. Hopefully we don't get to that point. I would love to think that that's what's going to happen. I think that makes a lot more sense than just trying to set an example right from the get-go. And then we can give an update on how it's going through the winter, but most importantly, kind of give that after the season summary to the infrastructure committee so that we can talk about whether or not that was the appropriate actions to take throughout the winter, or whether we need to look at something different for FY26. Questions?
Councilor Dean?
Did you find that most people were receptive to your reminders?
Last winter, we received a lot of pushback last winter, a lot of phone calls, because my number was what goes on the sign, so they called me directly, and a lot of concern about the fact that people just didn't have property. And I think we talked about this earlier this year. People just don't have the space to put snow. Contractors are struggling to find a place to put snow. And in that case, it's just an explanation of, okay, we understand that, but your actions are now causing people to walk in the street because they can't walk on the sidewalk, where they're taking us, so much extra time cleaning up all these piles that we're not getting all the sidewalks cleared, and at least making them understand why the ordinance is in place, and it's not just an arbitrary, mechanism for us to punish people. But yeah, a lot of people not happy with.
So a lot of it was from actual plowing, not shoveling, not purposely shoveling.
Yeah, I
that
think
area.
95% of it was from plowing,
Mhm.
yeah.
I'd love to see like a PSA, when we get a high school, get UTC over here, make a PSA of some little kid walking to school and encountering Mount Sidewalk and having to step out in front of a
Perfect.
speeding car, right?
Yeah.
We get all of our pet peeves done at once, but that's where, I don't walk on the sidewalk, well, you don't, but maybe somebody else does, that is
Yeah,
facing these burdens, so I'm very supportive of enforcing that. However.
after full education.
After full education, but have, maybe have, but even if there was, like, if you find some of those snowbanks or stage one and just have a picture of some little kid with his backpack having to walk around and.
I have no doubt that we will not have to stage one.
Yeah.
We will find an example. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, but just to, because, if you don't have kids walking to school, or maybe you forgot what it was like when your kids walked to school, or maybe you live in such a car culture, you forget about that piece. So I think that education but I do think that historic repeat offenders need to know that this is not okay.
Excuse me, a big part of this is gonna be the tracking. Last year, we didn't really do a great job tracking where we were putting signs out, so.
Do a map.
But we have the asset management software up and running now. It's not fully implemented, but we're using it, so that's gonna be part of it, is that they'll be mapping.
And it would also be interesting to know if it's homeowners or if it's one, contracted plow guy who can't be bothered, so is causing lots of problems.
We saw a mixture last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't all contractors, wasn't all homeowners, it was a mixture.
Yeah. Any other questions on this?
Just a comment, I think implementing any ordinance takes time we know this by experience. With the
Mhm.
trash pickup, it took a full year to get where we are now. It's amazing when I drive by, all of these trash cans are closed, and so it's amazing. It took time though. So we know this is gonna be the same way probably. Yeah, we'll get there.
Good, thank you for the support.
Any other questions? All right, the next item is Jefferson Davis. Bridge projects.
Bridge projects, lots of them. Very exciting. I didn't see if I can. Oh my God, I don't know. I think you're a list.
I think yours is a PDF, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's already loaded.
There it is.
Yep.
Let me share it.
Go back to your Zoom.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know what I'm doing, sorry.
Sure. For those of you who don't know, it's Jefferson Davis. He's the interim director of engineering. First time, I think. Oh, what are you doing? Get out of that. Just hit the share button, not the, yeah.
This one, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Starting off great. So. Last week, Debbie and I met with the DOT Bridge Program Project Manager. And he informed us that DOT has quite a few DOT bridge replacement projects. The first one being Nesca Avenue, which goes over to I-95, and the second one being Stillwater Avenue, which the bridge goes over Stillwater Avenue. But these are happening concurrently with the schedule. I'll just go through the list here. I'll just do that. So Nesca Avenue right here. Stillwater Avenue's here, Broadway is right here, which has an ongoing bridge project. So it's quite a few bridges in a very short span, which will have local impacts. The DOT, this is a public presentation that is up and running now, and I can share where that is. They're in a comment session right now, so anybody can go on. And make public comment, and then it's open till, I think, middle of September. But my plan is to get this on the city social media and plus the website. We can go there. But of course, with all our infrastructure, everything's aging, so they need to be replaced. And that's their number one goal here, is to replace the aging bridges. Right now, it's maintenance cost and is killing DOT with everything they have. But the overall goal, they say, is to minimize impacts to private property, the environment, and traveling public. It's gonna take a lot of coordination between DOT and the city to get these done. These are gonna be a design build project. So DOT is gonna go out right now for an RFP to get a contractor on an engineer on board. So they'll design it with a contractor, working with them, and then they'll just go build it. So they hope that's gonna save some time for their process. Investigate Avenue, of course, she drives over 95, that's it right there. Right now it's a four span steel beam bridge. You can see them there. Right now they're in concept stages because they don't have a contractor and engineer right now. But they'll do, you know, a two span girder bridge, which is a pretty typical these days. They plan on having 11-foot to 12-foot lanes with 3 to 4 foot shoulders, and of course sidewalks are very important on anything that we do. So that'll be probably 5 foot. They do have area utilities, which you can see right here, which is gonna be a little difficult. And then, of course, all the residential area north of the bridge. One that, this is probably a slide that you guys are very interested in. What are they gonna do when they close that bridge? So their DOT's plan right now is to use Valley Ave. So this will be closed. These folks will have to come up to Valley Ave, come down, and then enter downtown that way. That is, I should have shown a street view image of that, but that's not a great intersection, so DOT plans on doing some upgrades before this starts. I imagine they'll do a stop sign. So right now there's no stop sign, but I imagine there'll be a three-way stop sign there when that happens. But will be, the engineering department in the city will work with them on that. 95 bridge over Stillwater, you can see it's actually 2 bridges. So right now the concept is to have a 3-lane steel girder bridge. They want to improve the shoulder width to meet current standards. They also want to improve the exit and entrance ramps into Stillwater. You can see it right there. They have underground and area utilities in this area. Of course, very shallow bedrock, as you can see right there. And then a goal of this is actually to bring the turn lane down. Right now it's near Drew Lane, I think it is somewhere there. And the goal is to bring it down. And then also provide a sidewalk through there. And so you can see the existing roadway. There is a sidewalk right here, but it is constrained. Right now it's 2 12-foot lanes. There's a 6-foot shoulder. So they do want to make some vertical adjustments. And then have 3 12-foot lanes, which I said the center turn lane. And then keep the sidewalk. There has been talk of adding a sidewalk on this edge here. The city and some developers are, I think, just north of here. There's the storage unit, and then there was an old little daycare lot. There's going to be some congregate housing. I believe that's going through. So I think having a sidewalk on this side would be beneficial for that.
For sure.
But what they plan on doing is, this one isn't as impactful as Combustion because we don't have to close down, unless I got Stillwater. They think they can keep 2-way traffic most of the time. There will be certain times where they have to close it, but we're hoping that they can do that at night. Sometimes maybe not, but hopefully. But they're gonna kind of do one bridge at a time on this one, so that makes it a little bit easier. But you can see they do want to do, they'll have some temporary exits and, on the 186 on ramp and off ramp. Of course, I just went over this. I'm not doing a very good job staying with the slides here. They want to maintain continuous traffic and pedestrian access, which is key. Can minimize lane closures. Minimize durations of one-way alternating traffic. And when we had a meeting, that's when I said nighttime. They put that in this meeting, this slide. Okay. The big slide, schedule. So right now, they are just about in this stage here. They want to get concepts going and then have a preliminary public meeting. And then have solicitation of contractors, and then in 2025, and then final design is still 2025, live with construction beginning. I guess it's going to be fall in 2025 for both of them, with a construction completion date of 2029. So long process. So again, this is a public comment presentation that they have live. I'll send around. Actually, I can send this to you guys. I don't know if I've printed enough, but this is a little QR code that they have too that we can.
We got an email about this too.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know you guys. I'm sorry.
I have one quick question. Will Broadway be done before this starts, or will they be?
No,
No.
that was my next point.
Oh, boy.
So Broadway will not be done at
It's
that
okay.
time. They are struggling a little bit. I don't want to say anything bad about DOT or their contractors, but they are struggling right now with that project. But I think they're getting back on track with it. But unfortunately, I think when that one's complete and these ones will be beginning, and then I think with the Hogan Road diversion diamond, that will probably start when these two are in construction. On top of that, the city has on Ohio Street Bridge. Okay, let's go back. Right here. So, I was hoping it was on this one.
It's just
But
below
it's
the
not.
fold right there, I think.
Yeah.
It's right here. So it's about 400 feet from Griffin Road.
Yeah.
This side. We have a little concrete bridge there that Haley Ward just designed for us, and we're waiting on one easement and then we can put it out to bid. We're getting a little tight for this year to start, so it's probably gonna be spring of 25. But that one's probably only a 6-month process. That's just taking off the existing concrete deck. We're gonna utilize the existing concrete abutments there and then just expand on them. So it's a lot quicker process. So that will happen next year. But, and the DOT also has the Bullseye Bridge, which is on Griffin Road, which is just gonna be resurfaced. But DOT and the city have talked to, maybe that starts after we finish our Ohio Street Bridge.
And I know over the years, we replaced like the bridge over like the Hammond Street,
Yep.
Union Street. Will this take care of all our bridges, or like in 2030, can we be like, our bridges are done, it's your turn?
I think there's still, what do we have? We have 395, right, the interchange there. I'm not sure when that got done.
Okay,
But they're gonna be doing a big bridge project.
Yeah.
Crossing the river on 395.
Yeah.
That's scheduled shortly too. So this is gonna be the 10 years of bridges, but then we won't have to touch them for another 75 years.
yeah, and good jobs
So
too.
it's gonna be busy, but you can manage it.
Councilor Pelletier?
It just seems like a tremendous amount of disruption for a very long time.
It is.
So, I'm concerned about traffic that would normally be on 95 being diverted in and around neighborhoods that aren't expecting it and that aren't designed to handle.
So.
Not just people who are, I know they say, oh, well, this project, we'll keep a lane open or whatever. People are still gonna make a choice to stay off the highway and travel on street roads,
Yeah. But
neighborhood streets and that sort of thing. So my concern is how do we ensure that this doesn't become just clusters of congestion all over the city of Bangor for the duration of these projects?
well, the hope is by having two bridges here. One bridge is gonna be open the whole time. I don't think people will get off. And I think that's what DOT is thinking too. I mean, there's gonna be two-way traffic northbound, southbound the entire time. So I think they're hoping that alleviates this issue, and with Canduskay, 95 is still open, so it's just local traffic that's affected by that. So it sounds really bad, looks really bad. And I mean, there's gonna be times where it's gonna be bad, but I don't think it's gonna be from start date to end date, it's gonna be a mess everywhere. And DOT, and this is what they do. I think I have full faith in that. Yes, of course, construction is messy, but we can get through this without having major disruptions. The biggest one, I think, is just sending people down Valley Ave in that intersection. That's what I'm most concerned about.
Yep.
So I think we're gonna work with them to do some improvements there. Everything else, there will be times of delays, but I think we can manage it. Hogan Road, I haven't dug too deep into what that's gonna cause right now, but as soon as that starts moving forward more. Right now, they're kind of in their right-of-way process, or just starting that, and that's the last piece. We'll know more shortly. I'll update, whoever is in this position will update as we move forward. And we'll just have to, coordination is gonna be key. Making sure that everybody, public safety, Aaron, public works, engineering, that's gonna be key.
Thank you.
Councilor Trimble?
No, I would agree. And my only, listening to the presentation, my concerns about Valley Ave and 14th Street.
Yeah.
Maybe it's during the project, you may have to have a light in there or something. But the other thing is Bruce Road, right now, if you come to Bruce and Valley Avenue, the line of sight, there's already a mirror there.
Yeah.
I maybe just do a right turn only during this project there, because with the amount of traffic coming down, people try to take a left-hand turn, it could be a
Yeah,
disaster.
we talked about that in our meeting
So,
last week
yeah.
actually too. So there'll be traffic control plans that come out, and I can review that with the council, and we can go from there.
And even turning, I use Bruce Road every single day, so even turning left onto Bruce Road, there's a hedge there that blocks some. It's like, the sight lines are not great
Yeah.
for that whole area, but. So yeah, that's a very good point. I prefer it to the alternative of that big, hairpin turn
Yeah.
to get back to Hudson going up that way, so.
And that corner, there is some right of way we have there, so there are some utilities, but maybe there's talk that utilities could be relocated. We can make that a little better. So, because right now when you drive out, you have to almost do this to move. I'd rather,
And people
Turn.
swing really wide,
Yeah.
like they swing wide out, even if they probably don't need to in a modern car, but they do, so they go into the other lane, and it's
Yeah.
like that whole thing is tricky under normal conditions,
Yes.
so stressed conditions would be more.
but Valley and 14th, we could bump that curb out to get people facing a better direction too there. And we have a sidewalk project right there.
Yeah.
Coming up too. So,
Any other questions, comments? All right, that is the end of our infrastructure meeting. Thank you very much. We can, finance is next, and we can turn off the Zoom.
oh, sorry. Stop sharing.